Hi guys, I'm Katie. I'm from HackMIT, and I'm here today to talk to you about a problem that every one of you will either experience in the future or has already experienced, and that is enormous quantities of email. And so my talk today is on inbox management. So I'm going to start off with something that you shouldn't do. And I'm going to pull out an example from a real email from HackMIT. So you don't want to do this. To put a little context behind this, the party CC'd was a sponsor that had given us $40,000 and had suggested a venue. Yeah, don't do that. You also don't want to do this. This is in response to a sponsor who had emailed us asking us if we wanted them to sponsor us, to which a member of our team replied all and said, "The guy ignored me after like 4 emails." Luckily, the guy had a sense of humor and said, "Not sure I understood that last message. Maybe we should hop on a phone call." So that turned out okay, but it could have turned out much worse. Luckily, the sponsor was nice. Which brings me to my first tip. Enable undo send. This is a very, very helpful Gmail lab. And you can access this by going to the settings menu of Gmail. Lifesaver. So next thing you want to avoid. You want to avoid situations that look like this. This is me pinging someone on the team 6 times in a row. You don't want to do this. This is an example of pings used poorly. Instead, here's an example of a ping used effectively. Someone emailed into the team asking about prizes. The point person didn't reply. And so one person on our team sent a reply all ping to team only, and then someone followed up later. Which brings me to email accountability. Now, no one is perfect. There's always going to be an email that falls through the cracks. And for that reason, there needs to be some sort of email accountability system on the team. Now, there are 2 options here. First, if you are the point person for that email, I highly suggest using Snooze. And for those of you who don't know, Snooze is a very helpful feature on email clients such as Inbox, Mailbox. I think Streak and Boomerang have it also. And basically, if you can't take care of an email immediately, snooze it and have it come back to your email when you think you can take care of it. That way, you decrease inbox clutter and no email ever gets lost in a giant stack of emails you may or may not have time to take care of. The second tip is to have another person keep you accountable with your emails. Now, on the HackMIT team, we always had like 2 people who would follow up if someone forgot to reply to an email. And so that person, that dedicated accountability person, would snooze the email. And if the email came back into their inbox and it wasn't taken care of, they would reply all ping like you saw in the previous slide. 2 pings meant the email was on fire. Take care of it now, and usually that worked. So my next tip is the strongly worded email. So often often when dealing with sensitive situations such as emailing a sponsor that isn't really getting a message that you want to get across, or emailing with the administration, or emailing with maybe a vendor that isn't responding or isn't behaving properly, you want to use a strongly worded email. And basically, all this is being short and to the point, and being forceful in a way that compels the person you're emailing to reply promptly and to want to get things done. And I'll show you an example of this, but Basically, you want to use short paragraphs of about 4 sentences each. You want to use short sentences, so simple sentences to the point without flowery language. You want to state facts, things that have occurred. And you never want to use filler phrases such as I think and maybe. And a good rule of thumb is to go through an email that you've already composed and look at words that are not necessary. And if the sentence's meaning doesn't change, if you remove that word, then you should definitely remove that word. This just helps get thoughts across more clearly. And so, here's an example of a strongly worded email. In this case, a company's representatives had been drinking openly at HackMIT 2013. And so when they emailed us to come to HackMIT 2014, we said no, and I sent this email stating factually what happened and why we couldn't accept them to come back. And if you look, this is a 2-paragraph email, and I think there are not more than 4 sentences per paragraph, and mainly they state facts. This was effective. It got a almost immediate reply from the head of the recruiting team there, and we were actually able to work through the problems. And we use this technique when emailing our administration to get responses and to get people to act promptly. My next tip is formality. You want to be very careful when emailing various parties such as sponsors and administrators that you use the right tone. For example, you should address recruiters how you would address a new friend, someone you just met. You obviously wouldn't refer to them as yo dude, but you also wouldn't say like, dear Mrs. friend I just met yesterday. That's clearly way too formal. You should use hi blank, blank being the name of the person you just met, or the name of the recruiter in this case. And then a side note is definitely watch email copy-paste formatting. I've seen this a lot, and this happens when you have an email template on a Word doc or some other text editor, and you copy-paste it into Gmail and send it. But when you send it, what you don't see is that the recipient of the email is going to see it as Times New Roman small font, which makes it very obvious that you copy-pasted it in, especially when the name of the company is way bigger than the rest of the text. You can get rid of this by selecting all and then getting rid of all of the formatting on the text, and you should always do this with emails. All right, next tip, avoid being too casual. And so this is a follow-up from the last slide in which this person did not use caps and used colloquial phrases like my mate and etc. He's a chill person, but it was a little bit unusual for the circumstances of them being a sponsor. Next tip, opener. So this is especially pertinent with sponsor emails. Sponsors will often not read the full email that you send them. So the very first sentence of your email, the very first 2 sentences, should be a TLDR of sorts. The sponsor should be able to tell what you're saying just by reading them. And so this includes, 1, if you have never interacted with the sponsor before, you want to tell them who you are. Hi, I'm Katie from MIT, and I am contacting you because. And you also should insert buzzwords such as what university you are contacting them from, what your hackathon is, and the number of people that are going to be there. So here's an example of an email that was used to raise sponsorship for HackMIT. You can see that it starts out with, hi, Rob. This is actually to Rob of Twilio. And it introduces the person who is contacting him and says exactly why we are contacting him, HackMIT. All right, the next tip is promptness. Now, as hackathon organizers, we'll get hundreds of emails. But it's very important to respond to some of them within a certain window of time. For example, sponsor emails. Sponsor emails should be responded to within 1 day of receiving them. On HackMIT, we're very prompt with email, and we've actually received positive feedback on that. And you want to make your sponsors happy, so respond to their emails in a timely manner. With attendee emails, attendees can be pretty impatient, especially when dealing with travel reimbursement or day of logistics. Definitely respond to them in less than 12 hours. Urgent emails, such as press emails or administration emails, should be responded to in less than 1 hour. And then with on-fire situations, which definitely happened with HackMIT, we got our average response rate down to under a minute. It became similar to a chat where just everyone responded. And that is a really effective way to get things done very quickly. Next tip is one that we definitely use heavily on HackMIT. It's called the group compose. And we've used this for very sensitive situations, in particular dealing with the administration and dealing with press. This technique is when someone emails us a lengthy email to which we have to respond with a carefully crafted response, often long. One person on the team will reply all to team only with a link to a Google Doc, and then everyone will hop on that Google Doc and compose that email together. Finally, the person who is the point person will reply to the administrator or whoever emailed us with the contents of that Google Doc in an email. And I'll touch on some examples in which that was very effective later in my talk. But it definitely helps you get the job done in a much faster time because you can both compose and proofread at the same time. And then finally, this is a more up for debate tip, but the Facebook intro can actually be very, very powerful. Now, I don't recommend using this for sponsor intros unless you know someone who is a very good friend of a sponsor. But if you want to meet, for example, other hackathon organizers to ask them for advice in organizing, definitely use a Facebook intro. Facebook intros have this effect of sort of putting two people on the same level, sort of setting up that people are going to be friends on the same level. And that's unique to a Facebook intro. Email intros can be slightly more professional and removed. So I recommend using this. So why do these tips matter? Clearly, everyone could get by just using email normally, using your own system. But I do think that the tips I presented are pretty useful, and they came in handy in the following 3 scenarios. So first was raising sponsorship, and I already talked upon this, and I already showed an example of a sponsorship email, but a more interesting example was when we were dealing with issues with our administration. And so for those of you who might not know, we were presented with a list of demands from our administration that we had to work through. And those included limiting to the size to about half of what we wanted, limiting sponsorship to about a third of what we wanted, and limiting our event to not be overnight, among a couple more bullet points. In this case, group compose was essential. Also, the ability to reply to on-fire emails like that was also essential. If we had not sort of worked as a team to compose those emails, they wouldn't have addressed all of the points that we wanted. Multiple minds on an email is better than just one. And if we had not worded them strongly and surely, then we definitely wouldn't have gotten the point across as well. And then the third example is press. So we had a representative from our university newspaper contact us saying, here is an opinion piece that we're going to run. You have 1 hour to come up with a well-worded 500-word response to this opinion article. Otherwise, we're not going to consider it. And so within a minute, someone had replied all and said, here's the Google Doc. We all hopped on the Google Doc, we all composed the article, and we sent it back to them within 40 minutes, and we said, here you go. And in this case, again, using Group Compose, we were able to collectively do more than any one person would have been able to do. So those are the 8 email tips I have for you guys. If you have any questions, I can answer them. Yeah? How do I feel about emoticons? I do use smiley faces in emails. Those can be very effective, especially when you're saying something very stern and you just like add a smiley face at the end. It's like you did this wrong, but I still like you. Yeah? So one that's not responded to. All right, so the question was, what do we do if email is not responded to and no one follows up? So usually the way we figure out that happened was if the person we sent it, or that sent it, replies all and like pings us again, in which case usually that will provide some additional urgency. And so you can say, sorry, totally slipped through the cracks, we'll take care of it right now, urgently. And usually people don't look too negatively upon that.